Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen. Today I wanted to talk about the new flight model that I'm currently testing in the Star Citizen PTU Alpha 3.5.0 eye patch. The new flight model in the PTU is still evolving, please bear that in mind, but I'd like to talk about how I feel about it at the moment, its controls, how it all works, improvements that I'd like to see. Firstly, I suppose I want to tell you about interacting with things. I mean, I know we all know this already. Holding F is the interact mode. You then need to click on stuff to go into a ship. Then you get in and out of, well, get out of a seat button is Y. It is no longer H or U. They've changed it in this 3.5 I patch. So please bear that in mind as well. Quick tapping F will do whatever quick command is associated with that. So it can be get into a chair like this. Bam. When you're in a ship, you can press R to go into flight ready mode. That is useful. It does not toggle flight ready, it just turns it on, because pressing R again does, I think it toggles your gimbal mode, which you don't want to do if you're trying to toggle your flight mode. N is landing mode on and off toggle, but I'm going to take off by pressing space and move away. Right, let us go through the basic controls of the new flight model. So, if we press W, we go forward. When we release W, we stop going forward and we will eventually go back to 0. Pressing S, it goes backwards. A and D is strafe left and right. Q and E is roll. Space is strafe up. Control is strafe down. C will go into cruise control. Whatever you've set as your velocity control, it will try and maintain that speed in a forward direction. Pressing shift will do afterburner. Now, the thing about afterburner is that you do need to be going in a direction to use your afterburner. So I can use it if I'm strafing right. Just hold my shift, or I can go forward, hold my shift. It gives me an acceleration boost. V toggles decoupled mode. Now, this is useful decoupled mode because you can do things and keep your enemy sort of like in the center of you as you circle strafe around it is the idea, and then you can toggle it back on and off. You'll see a symbol over here when you're decoupling, so you can see that broken symbol that shows when decoupled is on. Press it V again, it will decouple off. Very, very useful. I think it's sort of like one of the higher skill ceiling things for the new flight model. So in the center of your HUD, you can see these things here. This is the most important thing that you will have with the new flight model. This is your velocity control. Mouse wheel up and down will adjust the velocity control. It is basically the maximum amount of velocity that my ship can go in any direction. So you can see a little red line there as well. When it goes beyond that red line, when I'm traveling beyond that red line, that means that basically that I'm in cruise mode, but I'm putting a little bit more or too much strain on my engines. It generates more heat. I'm not as great at maneuvering. I'm less agile is the idea. So if I press W now, I will go up to that line that I have set. If I press C, it will try and maintain me at the maximum velocity that I've set. And press C again to turn it off. But I can then mouse wheel up and then hold W, and it will try and take me up to that top speed. But I am generating more heat. I'm less agile if I try and turn now. Now, using a combination of velocity control on the fly, afterburner, and decoupled mode will get you killed because you'll hit a boundary. It's sort of like the skill ceiling, in my opinion, for the new flight model and combat. Let's respawn and actually talk a few more things. Combat is a lot slower as well now with the new model. Ships have more shield health too, but less regen on those shields. Power is important, as is heat. The main difference for me is the following and turning to targets. Ships have much larger turning circles and aren't able to just pivot on the spot to keep shooting at a target and that sort of stuff. At least not so much. You can slide past targets with decoupled mode and circle strafe around them to maintain fire for longer. You can start to use momentum as well with your SCM speeds to do some really intelligent things in combat without stressing out your thrusters, while enemies might need constantly afterburn to sort of like reposition and keep up. and you can sort of like see some of the slower paced combat, which is more sort of like stamina driven, with that people having large sort of like heat build-ups while they're also getting their thrusters sniped out, because you can target those thrusters and shoot those off effectively or damage them. That's going to cause your opponent to be less maneuverable, whether they've just got a load more heat built up or you've damaged them, or both. There is auto gimbals and gimbal convergence now as well, which allows for a lot of different weapons to be used together. Pip convergence, that literally has your pips coming together no matter sort of like the speed of your weapons. So you'd have a single pip to fire at a target, even if you had loads of different types of weapons. The idea. There is also auto gimbals, which basically have your guns aiming for you if they're gimbaled, at least a little bit. They haven't got the full range of movement that manual gimbals do. It is a toggleable mode, and you can think more about sort of like flying rather than having to aim to shoot. And you can see that the sort of stuff they're doing for combat here is to dumb it down somewhat and to make it a bit more simplified. There is still a good amount of skill that I believe can come through sort of like doing your acceleration control on the fly well, decoupling, afterburning, that's for sure, but it doesn't sort of like change the fact that it is a lot more simplified. Turrets still need work, but with the slower model, they can land hits, and larger ships that use them have a lot more health, so those larger ships aren't going to be taken down very easily by fighters. Larger ships also feel big when they fly around now too. ESP is still being tweaked and dialed in. It's uncertain what sort of experience we're going to have with 3.5 Live, but it's going to be more refined for 3.6, that's for sure. I'll just go through a couple of the combat controls. Alt 1 is target the nearest enemy. 3 is cycle enemy targets. 5 is cycle friendly targets. 2 will cycle subcomponents of ships. Thrusters at the moment, but it's good to understand that there will eventually be power plants and shields and stuff, all those sort of subsystems that you can shoot. Left alt plus the corresponding targeting key that we just talked about will cycle in the opposite direction. Holding Z will allow you to look behind your ship as well, which can be quite useful, especially with that new flight model. G launches a countermeasure. H toggles and cycles which countermeasure you are using, and T toggles your ship lights. Atmospheric flight. So the 3.5 model adds drag, lift, and gravity and considers mass, and has a more intensive flight model. Your ship will suffer in atmosphere if it's not suitable for it. Even if it is suitable, it will sort of like start to get a lot more heat built up on it. Your max speed will change, and the way your ship handles will also change from planet to planet to moon to moon. The atmospheric model feels to me like it is far from complete, though. The IFCS system sort of tries to keep your ship feeling like it's in space if it has enough power and isn't overheating. But it is likely to overheat from time to time, because atmosphere just puts a lot of pressure on your thrusters. Your ship will try and fight you a bit when you're trying to turn as well, sort of like pulling you back towards the way you were traveling in. The slower you are traveling, the less that pull will be. Rolling really helps in atmospheric flight to sort of like do turns and maneuvers. The lower you are in atmosphere, the slower you will go. If your ship is a brick, then turning will be harder. VTOLs and landing mode will point sort of like your thrusters downwards where appropriate, and having those VTOLs or those downward pointing thrusters does really help in atmosphere. It accelerates you upwards better. It's simples. Larger ships dislike atmosphere a lot now. They overheat and are very sluggish. On a very positive note, actually, when quantum traveling to a location on a planet or moon, you do come out of quantum a lot closer to that location and a lot deeper in that atmosphere, and you can go back into quantum without having to travel thousands of meters out of an atmospheric boundary now. So these boundaries are much closer to the surface, is what I'm trying to say. Though this kind of quality of life improvement is sort of separate from the new flight model, I suppose. There's also a sea level altimeter and a terminal velocity display too, once you are in atmosphere. So I kind of want to talk about how I feel about this at the moment. I want to look fully at this flight model once it's out in 3.5 live, because I do suspect there will be keys changes and it will change and get refined, and there's a lot of bugs and stuff to fix. The new flight experience for me is actually quite fun and makes sense. It's simple, lightweight, and works. It's nothing I would deem amazing or terrible yet. It is severely dumbed down though. Combat-wise, they are trying to balance parts before we have all the systems in, like physicalized components, misfires, updates to the power system, HUD improvements, cockpit improvements, scanning radar updates, the physicalized damage system, the targeting of subsystems. They have, in my opinion, normalized and simplified a lot of that combat. So low to medium skill players will be much more similarly matched. The combat is slower. Ships have more effective health. Gimbals can aim for you. The convergence is simpler. You'll be chasing ships or sort of like past them, sliding and circle strafing around them in decoupled mode if you're dogfighting. Yeah, it does make larger ships fly differently, and sort of like the gun ships, they deem them, anything that's using turrets effectively as most of its damage and is larger, they fly very differently from a dogfighter. And really, I want to see how this all sort of balances out with bombers and things as well. At the higher end, learning to use the velocity control and decoupled and your afterburner, well, is going to have you really differentiating yourself skill-wise between other players. Another thing to point out probably is that the placement of thrusters is important in ships too. That is literally where the thrust is coming from, and it affects how your ship performs. Lose a couple of key thrusters in key positions, and your ship might be handling extremely poorly. Actually, to be honest, losing any thrusters is going to be a bit of a hit to your maneuverability. The flight model will see improvements before 3.5 live, and will have a load more iterations on it for 3.6 and beyond. Their goal probably being to have it perfect or near perfect for when Squadron 42 goes into beta in 2020. At least that's the plan. Combat and atmospheric flight need a good amount of work, and combat requires a hell of a lot of balancing. You need to balance all those weapons. You need to balance how it all feels, and that requires a lot of polish and stuff as well. So there are certainly problems with some of the combat stuff compared to 2.6.3, for example. I'll talk more about the flight model over the coming days, as I expect it to see, as I said, a lot of changes and bug fixes. I think the flight part of the flight model is fine and has potential. Having ESP and heat working really well would help this a lot too. The combat element of it, more specifically what I'm talking about at the moment, is dogfighting, I suppose. I'm yet to be fully convinced of it being great or not yet. I mean, it's certainly... Really what I'm saying, actually, with that is that I would still prefer 2.6.3's combat at the moment. I really enjoyed 2.6.3, but I can see what they're trying to do with refinements and all of that coming together and quality of life stuff and the polish, that it could potentially be quite a bit better. So one day, maybe I'll prefer the new flight model for combat. I'm going to reserve judgment a little bit longer. I suppose the question you could ask is, do I want to go back to the old one, 3.4.3, and improve that one instead? And that would be a hard no. I do think this is an improvement and has a lot more potential than the one that is on the current live build. The new model, as well as I understand it, is a lot less resource hungry, so you can have eventually many more ships on screen fighting at higher frame rates. Now, that's just my opinion on the new flight model as it stands currently. You can have your own opinion. You can totally disagree with me. That is fine. I still need to get another 20 plus hours into it really before I can really give it a bit more of a review. And I do think it's probably better to look at it in a lot more detail when 3.5 is live. Yes, talk about it now. Yes, say what you like about it and what you don't like about it now, and try and get it pushed into a place where it's going to be in a good state for 3.5 live, but to review it and say it's great or it's terrible or whatever at the moment is probably a little bit too early to say for sure. But please tell me what you think in the comments below. Every month we have a ship giveaway. This month, by popular demand again, it's for an Anvil Carrack, this time sponsored by Forgotten Heralds, a lawful private military company with a history grounded in UEE military service. They are recruiting at the moment and are a good choice for both veteran and new players alike. All you need to do to be in for a chance of winning that Carrack, though, is be subscribed to my YouTube channel and comment on any of my Star Citizen videos made during this month. Links to more info on Forgotten Heralds and full details of the giveaway down below. If you don't have a gaming PC yet or you are upgrading, instead consider Shadow Cloud Gaming. They allow you to leverage the powers of the internet to stream a high-spec Windows 10 environment to any other PC, Mac or device like a smartphone or tablet. It is working really well in Star Citizen's 3.4 branch, and be sure to use the code BoredGamer if you do decide to check it out to get a discount. Links below. This channel exists because of its community. If you wish to support the channel further, below there are links to Patreon, Subscribestar, and there's the YouTube channel memberships, literally the join button below this video. VIPs do get some exclusive stuff and early content as a thank you as well. If you have any feedback, suggestions, or just want to say hi, please drop a comment below or poke me on discord.gg/BoredGamer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the verse.